I don't know about all of you, but from the perspective of a starving student, that breakfast was wonderful. Thanks to Iron Gate Catering for doing that for us. Again, my name is Matt Schroeder, and it is my privilege to introduce to us today Mr. Jerry Solomon. Jerry has over 35 years of experience working in a variety of industries where he has held positions such as CFO and Vice President of Operations. He has led transformations achieving dramatic improvements in inventory turns, lead times, consumer service, income, and cash flow. He's authored 3 books, each titled Who's Counting?, Accounting for World-Class Operations, and Leading Lean, 2 of which have been awarded the prestigious Shingo Award. He was the Maryland Lean Leader in 2013, and he has been a longtime board member of the Maryland World Class Consortia. He is a founding thought leader in the subject matter of reconciling accounting and lean management, and that is a subject that he will be presenting to us today. Please give a warm welcome to Jerry Solomon.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. First of all, I just want to get a sense of the audience. How many practitioners do we have here practicing world-class, lean, whatever? Raise your hand. How many students? Wow, the majority of students. Okay, that'll be interesting. How many of the students are from the accounting arena? 1. Okay, you might need to help everyone else because I'm going to try to make this interactive. So if you have a piece of paper, get it out and I'll help you through it. Okay? So let's go. First, a little bit to elaborate a little bit on what Matt said. I retired in December from a company called Barry Waymiller Companies. It's approaching $2.5 billion in revenues. It's the largest capital goods equipment manufacturer in the Western Hemisphere of packaging equipment. So whether you're canning stuff, bottling stuff, putting it in bags for food, doing pharmaceuticals, we probably make the equipment in the factories that actually make the product. It's a company that has really been growing about 19% a year for the last 21 years. It's approaching 9,000 team members, and this has to be updated all the time because they're constantly doing acquisition. Major pathway for growth is acquisitions. And it's privately held by about 450 shareholders because you have to remain under 500 before you become a public company. But even though it's a private company, it's still managed like a public company in the sense that we have a stock. There's an EVA model in terms of how the stock is valued. There's institutional investors. So the company is under the same scrutiny, and we're under the same pressure to make the quarterly numbers, the annual numbers as a private company. Okay, first of all, I just want to take a second to remind everyone what lean is all about. Excuse me. First of all, we typically talk about lean in terms of 2 pillars. The elimination of waste and respect for people. I'm sure you've heard that. The elimination of waste is all about using lean tools to improve and perfect safety, quality, delivery, and cost. And if you notice, cost is the last word in those 4. It's the last attribute because it's the result, it's the outcome. In a few minutes, I'm going to prove to you why cost has to be the last of the 4 in SQDC, okay? And in respect for people, it's all about inspirational leadership, which is about changing the culture and the organizational structure at a company. So I have a question for you, and I know there's not many practitioners in here, but even among the students, if you had to divide up these 2 pillars, you had 100%, how do you think in the real world companies practice it? How much of the 100% do they devote to the pillar on the left versus the pillar on the right? Any guesses? Excuse me? 90. Okay, and I don't have to ask which pillar gets the 90. But thank you. Most companies typically do it this way. I mean, that's why when we talk about lean, It depends which literature you read, whether 85% of companies are truly lean, or whether, fail to achieve true lean, or whether the number is worse than that. But when we talk about elimination of waste, we do drive-by kaizens, which someone comes and does lean to an organization, focus on the shop, and lack of alignment. By the same token, we have layoffs, we continue with the command and control environment, and middle management typically struggles. So what I would propose to you, and this has become evident in terms of what you hear at all the conferences. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here yesterday, but I was at a conference last week and another conference the week before, and many of the keynotes and discussions are all about culture. Because as long as we've been doing lean, since the machine that changed the world came out, in the mid-'80s, we've been focusing on the tools. And we're seeing we're only getting so far with the tools that it's all about culture. And so as companies progress, they have to spend a lot more time on this, which is very different. It's about a no layoff environment, C-level support, and it's all about respect for people. And we try in our company, at least we were not allowed to use the typical words elimination of waste. And why couldn't we use elimination of waste? Because if I go into your area and I say we're going to improve it and we're going to eliminate all the waste in your area, how does that make you feel? Kind of sending a message to you that what you've been doing is wasteful, you don't know what you're doing. So we want to reframe it in terms of continuous improvement and respect for people. So I know this talk is about accounting, and I want to lead in with respect for people, because the reason I'm so passionate about lean accounting, it's all about respect for people. When we think about accounting, we give people in the rest of the organization information that they simply don't understand. They can't interpret, and it's just totally lacking in respect for the people in the organization. And how do I know that? My epiphany came a long time ago, 1985. I bet a bunch of you weren't even born then. Okay, in 1985, I was CFO of a heavy manufacturing company, and we just hired on a new president from a New York Stock Exchange company, and he was there about 6 months, wasn't happy with the way things were going, and he said, Jerry, I'd like you to take charge of manufacturing. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but I said, hey, I'm game for anything. And I thought about it, and I said, what am I going to do for the 300 people in manufacturing? You gave me a new, set of keys, big set of keys. They hired a consultant to walk me around all the manufacturing facilities for a couple of days, show me every nook and cranny, how every machine is supposed to work. And I thought about it, and I said, what could I do for these 300 people? Really, it's all within them. I just have to bring it out, what's already there. And so I went and took the new position, and I also realized that in this process, I was moving from supplying a product. As CFO, I was supplying a product, and that product was financial information. And now I was going to be the customer of that product in terms of being in charge of operations. So the first thing I wanted to do is understand the value proposition. And by that I mean, was there any value to the intended customers for this information? So way back then, we didn't have laptops on everyone's desk. We actually had thick green bar reports that everyone used. And I came in very early one Monday morning, and usually those green bar reports were in these pigeonholes, this whole wall of pigeonholes outside of IT. And every Monday morning, people came in, they got all the reports that ran all the weekend. And I went to all of these reports that were intended for the audience in manufacturing. And I randomly opened them to any page and took magic marker and I said, call me immediately when you get to this page. Guess how many phone calls I got? I didn't get any, okay? And here I was, the CFO. Now, I was satisfying the bank, I was satisfying the board, I was satisfying the IRS and all my external constituencies, but I was not satisfying my internal constituencies. And so I went and interviewed all of them, and we talked about what it is they really need. So that's why I'm passionate, because if we're true to the pillar respect for people, we really need to be respectful of everyone within our company. Okay? So then we talk about the financial reports, and do they answer any of these questions? Do they make the numbers easy to understand? Now, you're not in accounting, but I will tell you this. When you see financial results in a company, they typically either numbers have brackets on them or they don't have brackets on them. If it's a number what we call a variance and it has a bracket around it, that typically means something good is happening. If it's any other number that has a bracket around it, it means something bad. So you try to keep that straight. I could tell you no one understands what's going on when they see the numbers. And I liken it to, sports. If you go to a ball game, first thing you want to know, you turn on the TV, the score is right there in the bottom of the screen. If you're playing football, we're in football season. How could the quarterback call the plays if they don't know time left in the game, score, down and distance, what yard they're on, all of those things. Yet we expect people to come to work, not understand the score, and go home and feel fulfilled. Just doesn't work that way. Okay, so when we look at the financial statements, do they make the numbers easy to understand? Do they promote lean behavior? Not at all. Do they illustrate lean benefits? None of those things. So we set about to change that. Now, one of the big problems that you'll have when you get an industry is if you have an organization that's doing lean and they're doing really good work, the problem is what they do is usually going to be invisible to accounting. It's going to be invisible on the financial statements. Okay? The other thing is all the manufacturing metrics that we currently use today are pretty much outdated. And I'm going to prove all of this to you. And the greater initial success that you have with lean, all else being equal, you learn that a lot in economics, all else being equal, earnings will be negatively impacted. So it's kind of hard to go down this road if you're going to be successful and you don't know what's going to happen to the financial statements of the company. Okay? Lastly, because of those three things, accounting is often one of the biggest roadblocks to a successful lean journey. And when I say they're a roadblock, it's not because they're bad people. They just do not understand what's going on in the lean journey. They haven't been brought into the game. They haven't typically participated in all the events, so they can't anticipate. And usually it's the accountant that has to help the the CEO, the general manager, the president, anticipate the upcoming financial results. And if you're very successful in the manufacturing floor and everyone's high-fiving each other, and then you get the monthly results and the numbers are worse than the accountants expected, and they can't explain it, the easiest answer is stop what you're doing, because I can't anticipate it, I can't explain it, and we just have to stop what we're doing. Okay? So, lean is strategic, it's a huge competitive advantage, it's mostly invisible. Let me try to prove that with this simple example. Let's say we have a company that's making these markers, okay? They do molding, plastic injection molding. They do the cases and they fill it. And the way it works is they come in and they do a setup for 2 hours, okay? Then they run 6 hours, and in that they make 512 pieces and 1 SKU, stock keeping unit. So they make one item in a day, they do one shift, they make 512 pieces. They've always been doing that. They sell the distribution, their service level is not very good, their flexibility is not very good, but that's what they do. And pay attention because I'm going to ask you some questions, okay? So they've been doing this and they decided that they want to go lean. They've read about it, they've heard about it, some of their customers are saying, you're pretty slow to fulfill our orders. So they go to a university that teaches lean operations, lean manufacturing, and they hire a young person to come in and start him off. He was a manufacturing, or she was a manufacturing engineer. And he's there about a month, okay? And the first thing he wants to do is do a 5S. Does anyone know what a 5S is? It's industrial housekeeping, a place for everything and everything in its place, okay? If you don't know what 5S is, when you go home, go to your kitchen, look for a piece of Tupperware, the top and bottom. It'll take you a long time to find the top and bottom that go together. That's what happens in our plants day in and day out. Or if you go to your garage or you go to your basement and look for something, if you can't find it in 60 seconds or less, you need to 5S it. So anyway, he joins the company. He's there a couple of months, says we need to do a 5S to reduce our setup time. And the Owner says, no, you haven't been with us long enough. You don't understand. You need to be patient. Another month later, they hire a sales VP that also is joining because they know if they go lean, they're going to improve their competitive position, and he wanted to be part of that, and he joined. So the thing about, and another couple of months go by, they're anxious to do something, and they're not doing it. A couple of things about these two individuals. A, they live 45 minutes from the plant. B, they're both single with no significant other. C, they rent, and they rent in the same housing unit, and they commute together. So what happens when you commute 45 minutes each way and you're not happy at work? A lot of windshield time. And they decided, we're young enough, we have no mortgage, let's go and do this on our own. So they both left the company, and they went out and they bought the same type of molding machine, set it up to run, and lo and behold, it took 2 hours to do a setup. They ran 6 hours and got 512 pieces. And then the sales guy said to the manufacturing guy, let's see what you're made of. Let's reduce setup. So they did a 5S, and please, I don't know, does anyone know what setup reduction events are? Never do a setup reduction event until you do a 5S first, because you could set the camera on a tripod and you'll set it up and you'll never see the person in the frame of reference because they're constantly moving to get parts, to talk about work instructions, to get fixtures, or what have you. Okay, so do a 5S first. So anyway, they do a 5S and they get down to 1 hour setup time, and they decide to come in and do a setup for 1 hour, run for 3 hours, make 256 pieces, say of this color, then they go to lunch, then they come back and do a second setup, takes an hour, they run for 3 hours, make another 256 pieces, and now they have 2 SKUs in 1 8-hour shift. They do this a couple of months later, they do a setup reduction, they get down to 30 minutes, and now they're doing 4 setups in an 8-hour shift, doing 128 of each piece, 4 SKUs, and now customers are ordering different variety packs. You're getting deliveries in 24 hours. Customers are feeling good about it. The value proposition is improved. Here's your problem, though. You still work for, we'll call it, traditional company, and you are all the vice president of sales of traditional company, okay? And your compensation is 100% sales commission. You don't sell, you don't get paid, okay? Now, the other thing, and I know this line doesn't really go well with this audience because you're a heck of a lot younger. Some of you do have kids. Anyone have any teenage boys? Okay, you know if you have teenage boys, when they come home, the first thing they do is go to the side-by-side refrigerator, put hands on both sides, open it up, and see which side they're going to empty out first. That's what teenage boys do. Trust me, I've been there. So here's your problem. You have 3 teenage boys. You only get compensated if you sell because it's 100% commission. And you're in charge of competing now with this company that's gone lean, does better customer service, and you have to compete. What are you going to do to compete so you can keep getting your commission and feeding those teenage boys? What's the first thing you could do? And you can't go lean. So what's the first thing you might do? Excuse me? Okay, great. And that's the easiest thing to do. So the first thing you might do, I'll put it lower price, okay? What else might you do? Okay, you can increase inventory. Is that the same person? Okay. If you increase inventory, first of all, if you increase inventory, by definition, you're producing more than you ship. So how are you going to know what to produce more of? What are you going to use to determine what you produce more of? Forecast. Okay. Anybody here work for a company that has world-class forecasting? They get it right all the time? Raise your hand because I want to talk to you after this session. Okay. So one of the things that goes up when you increase your inventory is what we call E&O, excess and obsolete inventory. That will go up. It'll cost you money. You'll write it off sometime down the road. Now, if you're producing more than you used to produce, what are you going to need to do that? Excuse me, people? You're going to need people. You're going to need supplies, space, material. You get the point. Now, all of these are going to cost money, right? All of these are money, and it all costs money simply because the other company is going lean and you're refusing to do it. That's the problem. So if you're going to compete and the whole world's doing some aspect of operational excellence, you need to get in on that strategy. And that's what lean's all about. But this talk is about accounting. So the problem is, as we go down and get lean and reduce our setup time and reduce our batch size and produce more batches, we're changing the dynamics with our customers, with our value proposition. But if you're sitting in accounting and you are not aware what's going on in the plant, and you're looking at traditional measures of performance from the plant, say it comes at end of a week or at end of a month, there are typically 3 metrics that people look at in accounting relative to manufacturing. Does anyone know what those are? I'll help you. One starts with a P, one starts with a U, and one starts with an E. Productivity, efficiency, and utilization. Okay? Now, if you're sitting in accounting and you have one company operating on that plane, one operating here and one operating here, will those numbers look any different to the people sitting in accounting at the end of the month if they look at productivity, efficiency, and utilization? So we need some accounting people to help us here. Will those numbers look any different? Okay, and you're all saying no, so thank you. And the reason they won't look any different is because they're just looking at the input, 8 hours, and the output, 512 pieces. And it doesn't matter where you operate on that spectrum, people in accounting are going to say, I don't know why they're high-fiving each other in manufacturing. Nothing's changed. Nothing's gotten better. And that's the problem, that what goes on in manufacturing will be invisible to what goes on to the people in accounting unless they start changing their metrics. Last thing, I said safety, quality, delivery, and cost is last. There's a reason cost is last. It's an outcome. Some companies, and I don't think it's many, but some companies go into lean or operational excellence when they have no other choice, when they're hurting, when it's a crisis. And then they say, we've got to go lean and we've got to reduce costs in the next 60 days. Now, if this company had that reason for going into lean, they may be tempted to do the following. They reduce setup time from 2 hours to 1 hour, so they might say, let's do a 1 hour setup, let's run for 6 hours, let's get 512 pieces, and let's send our people home 1 hour early. And therefore, we save 1 hour of labor. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that'll be your first and last lean event. People did some great stuff, and they just were shown a lower paycheck, okay? But more important, well, that is very important, but the other things that are important are that you didn't improve anything in the customer value proposition. You didn't lower your batch size. Therefore, quality is not going to improve. Speed's not going to improve. All of those other things that we want to get through lean. So if cost is our primary objective, you will probably make the wrong decisions based on your lean improvements. You all with me? Okay, great. So typically the way companies operate is they do what's called full absorption costing or standard costing. They take all the costs and they try to spread it to every SKU. So they seem to think they know what this costs, that this item might cost $2.158762. You know, we can't mill something to the nearest, you know, to 5 places to the right of the decimal point, but the cost people think we could cost it to that accuracy. So in lean, we'd rather be approximately right than precisely wrong. Okay, that's what we say. Okay, so traditional management accounting is not wrong, but the problem was it was developed in the 1920s. Okay, and in the 1920s, it was a batch and queue environment, very, very few SKUs. And it was all about economies of scale and division of labor. Okay? So when the cost environment is dominated by direct labor, all your metrics are going to be pertaining to direct labor. It made sense in the 1920s. Okay? We also had production people often compensated based on piecework. Again, another reason to be focusing on the labor side of things. Here's the conflict. In 21st century manufacturing, we're doing things completely different. We've asked operations to change, go to small batch size. We've asked product development to completely change the way they develop products. We've asked sales and marketing to do lean sales and marketing. They haven't quite got there yet. We're asking to treat people differently, get away from command and control environments, to total participation and teamwork, all of those things. But manufacturing and the way we keep score has not changed. So we're trying to go to one-piece flow. Our wage rates are different. They're really hourly rates, not piece rates. A lot of people in manufacturing are on salary now because they're in overhead, okay? And we have mass customization. So we're changing the environment from what it was in the 1920s. So it shouldn't be surprised that as we go lean, we need a new approach for accounting, control, and measurement of what goes on, okay? Another way to look at the conflict, we all have the same goals to improve performance. In 20th century manufacturing was all about improve efficiencies, okay, reduce unfavorable variances, maximize each individual operation. If you order a machine, keep that machine running, get your unit cost as low as possible. Problem is, in 21st century manufacturing, when we do lean, it's all about continuous improvement, eliminating waste. It's about optimizing the system. Very rarely do you optimize a system by optimizing each individual operation. So in lean, we set up value streams, we do value stream maps, and we try to optimize the system, which means we may slow things down in some operations. So those two things are not compatible. So all reasons why accounting has to change in the 21st century. Another way to look at the same thing is when you looked at what the cost structure was in the early 1900s, most of it was direct labor, so it made sense. There was no such thing as overhead. Overhead consisted of the supervisor of the people actually doing what we call direct labor, and material was a small component. But by and large, if you survey companies today, the way their costs are divided up is the biggest cost component is material. Then followed by overhead, because we have this massive infrastructure that all of these automated reports that have to be maintained, manufacturing engineering, industrial engineering, supply chain people, all of this is in the overhead, in addition to a whole bunch of other things that we can't assign discretely to products. And direct labor is 10% now. So again, I ask you, does it make sense to keep looking at manufacturing and measurements the same way we did in the 1920s when this is what direct labor is today? Does it make any sense at all? None. But we keep doing that. The other phony thing is we call this 10% direct labor. Anybody ever film any direct labor activity here? Anybody ever film it? Most of it, they're not working. We really hardly have any direct labor. And if you don't believe me, if you ever do a tour of a manufacturing plant or you go back to your company on Monday, go to the middle of the manufacturing floor and walk in any direction. Count the first 20 people you see, and of those 20, how many are actually turning a wrench or doing value-added work? You won't need more than the digits on one hand. We really have very little direct labor out there. So we have to change the way we look at things. And there's a lot of deficiencies in standard cost because the presumption is that direct labor and overhead is variable, okay? And that's inconsistent with lean and a lean journey and our commitment to the workforce, okay? And it's not variable because has anyone ever taken out $1 of direct labor, and if overhead was 3 or 4 times direct labor, $3 or $4 of overhead would have come out? It doesn't. It usually goes up, okay? So these are the assumptions that the systems people are using are composed of. And as I said, people don't understand the full cost P&L. The last thing, and I'll go through quickly, is I've surveyed thousands of companies, looked at actual data, and I've asked people how accurate are their systems, and then I've gone into detailed data. And if you look at it, by and large, people's current cost systems, material is about 90% accurate, okay? Direct labor is 60% accurate, and overhead is about, they're very generous. They want to give me lower numbers, but I don't want to put numbers no one will believe, 30% accurate. So in total, most of our costs at the SKU level, 35% wrong. The problem is if we don't know if they're 35% too high or 35% too low. Yet we try to make decisions at the micro level. So these are some of the challenges we have, okay? And then when you look at typical performance measures, they're usually late. You know, you get them 2 weeks after month end, you have an unfavorable performance, and then you're supposed to address it. But the people in manufacturing, if they're doing lean, they have hour-by-hour metrics. They've already taken care of it, okay? So let me give you a quiz. And if you're not accounting, I still would want you to take part. This is a very simple operation, okay? We have 4 operations. We take a part and we drill it, and it takes 2 minutes. Then we mill it, it takes 4 minutes. Then we assemble it, it takes 6 minutes, and then we pack it out, and it takes 3 minutes. That's what it takes to make this particular part. And this is going to be audience participation. I know you didn't think you were coming to class first thing in the morning, but I'm sure some of you could help me out. You could ignore this for now. You could ignore this for now. The only thing you need to know is direct labor rate per hour is $30. The overhead multiplier is 3 times direct labor, and the material cost per completed unit is $10. I have a simple question. What does it cost to make 1 completed unit? It has to go through 4 operations. When it's done, what will the system tell you it costs to make it? Take a second. Think about it. Talk to each other. Lean's about collaboration. I will tell you, though, 50% of people get this wrong. So if you talk to someone, to pick the right person on your left or right, okay? If I talk to operations people, 75% of the people get it wrong. So take a minute. Okay, let's try to wrap it up. What I usually do is have you write it down on Post-it notes and prove that half the people get it wrong, but I don't need to do that here. Does anyone want to volunteer an answer? Yes, sir. $40. Thank you. How many people, and this is, did not get $40? Got a number other than 40? Show of hands. Okay, fair amount. Good. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I assume you got it this way. Total minutes is 15. The cost per minute is 50 cents a minute. Therefore, direct labor, 50 cents times 15 is $7.50. Overhead is 3 times direct labor. Add in the material and it's $40. Pretty straightforward. That's what your system is doing over and over and over, counting the minutes by operation. So thank you. I appreciate that. Now we do a lean event. We create a U-shaped cell. We right-size the equipment, co-locate it, set up Kanbans, and we have this new operation. This is the way it looks now. And the people in operations are high-fiving. They are really excited. Everything is going so much better. People feel better. Now take a minute and tell me what it costs, what the accounting system is going to say it costs to produce this. Anyone care to do an answer other than the gentleman in the hat over here? Yes? 40 what? 6, yes, correct, thank you. Because that's all the accounting system is doing is how many minutes. And the lean people, before they balanced the line or anything, they co-located it, okay? They put people next to each other. They reduced their lot size. Because what we have down here is production lot size, 300 pieces, on-time performance, 95% lead time, versus before we had a lot size of 3,000 pieces, lead time of 8 weeks, and on-time performance of 75% and average inventory of 5,000. So they've done a lot of improvements, but someone in accounting is going to say, what are the people in operations doing? The cost is going up. That's a huge problem. Okay? So when we do it, and that's the way I assume you got the answer, 18 minutes times 50%, etc. So when we look at the before and after, the metrics people in operations are looking at all got better. Inventory, 90% improvement. That's what you could do with lean. Lead time, 75%. On-time performance. All of these customer-focused things and quality have improved. We need a lot less transactions because co-located. It's now a cell. Teamwork has gone from very poor because things were spread out to a cohesive team, but the unit cost has gone up 15%. And that's why if you continue with the same metrics as you've always had, things will look different from accounting's perspective versus operations who think they're doing a great job. And that's why people come to me and say, Jerry, I don't understand. We keep improving in manufacturing, but the people in accounting don't understand. And the people in accounting have to get out there and start looking at different metrics. And the people in operations have to be able to explain what's going on and start refocusing the company on some different ways of looking at things. Now, did we affect the P&L of the company? The top line of any P&L is sales, right? And sales are basically limited to how much throughput you could get in the business. So I would ask you, in this first case, and think about this before you shout out an answer. How many units could you get out an hour here? How many people say 4? Okay, put your hands down and think about it some more. How many units can you get out an hour? 10. And why 10? Because in lean and theory of constraints, we look at the bottleneck operation. Improving anything other than the bottleneck operation is not going to get us all that much. And in this particular case, you were limited by the fact that you could only do 6. It takes 6 minutes to do this operation, therefore you could do 10 an hour, no matter what the other operations do. Now in here, how many can you get out an hour? Same 10, right? So it really doesn't matter the fact that we changed the cell configuration in terms of affecting the P&L. We lowered our work in process because we slowed down operations. You're better off slowing operations to get to the bottleneck time until you increase the bottleneck time. We didn't affect the P&L, so no change. All of the lean metrics got better, and only one metric got worse. Now that's the problem we're facing when we do this, okay? Another thing is we have typical metrics in the manufacturing company. Those are practitioners. Are any of these metrics familiar to you? Do you get judged on some of these metrics? Practitioners, help me out here. Yeah? And you really look forward to it? No. Okay. The problem is most, if not all, these metrics promote non-lean behavior. One of the worst is machine utilization. We bought these machines many years ago, and we did justifications based on what throughput we could do. We're going to load the machine, we're going to run it 24/7, we're going to get the unit cost down. That bears no resemblance to takt time, which is the rate with which you have to produce to meet customer demand. Once you produce at that rate, you're better off shutting the machine down. Okay? I'll give you one example, purchase price variance. I hate that. And when I joined this company in 2001, the CEO was pretty big on this, and he had a contest for all the purchasing departments around the country. Whichever area had the biggest purchase price favorable variance in a quarter, they would win a free extended weekend with them and their significant other to one of the company properties, which were all in nice locations. Okay? And I was looking at why we were getting big favorable purchase price variances, and I traced it through the master schedule and the production schedule and all of these things. And I finally went to some of the people when I traced it and asked, why did you buy this lot size? And they said, Jerry, you don't understand. If we jump up to this lot size, we get this lower price. And I knew we'd be writing it off a year from now. So I immediately stopped that game. I wasn't very popular. but purchase price variance promotes non-lean behavior. It promotes a lot of shopping for getting new suppliers because they could be a penny lower, when lean is what? About a partnership with suppliers, opening your kimono, okay, and sharing information. And they're only going to really dig deep and share that proprietary information if they know they're going to be a long-term supplier with you. And they're going to help you in product development and a whole bunch of places. Okay. Also, when you switch around, one of the goals in lean is to reduce your supply base. If you are motivating people in this manner, you're typically going to promote an increase in your supply base. And that's not a good way to go. Okay. And then you get quality and other considerations. So I could go through the same thing for all the variances that we traditionally use, but I would tell you to look at things different. Look at what you're spending on your purchases. It's now your biggest cost, and start trending it. Is our average price for a type of material going up or going down? And look at actuals, see which way it's going in total, and start working on that. Don't compare it to an artificial standard. Okay? So I want to try to sum up a few things here now. Inventory over time at any company starts at zero. Then as years or decades go on, companies grow their inventory. We are consistently producing more than we ship. And what that means is we benefited by taking expenses for labor and overhead, and instead of hitting the P&L, they go on the balance sheet. And it just builds and builds and builds over decades. In lean, we want to go the other way. We want to be a vending machine. You give me an order, I press a button, I make it and ship it to you right away. So we want to reverse this trend and get back to where we started. In an ideal world, zero inventory. Okay? That's a tough thing to do. Now, I want you to think about this. You're going to need some help from the accountants. Let's say we have this imaginary company that has one inventory turn. Can someone tell me how much inventory they have if they have one inventory turn? How much inventory do they have if they have one inventory turn? 1 year. Thank you, sir. That means on the shelf they have 1 year's worth of inventory. Let's say their customers they deal with on a contract basis, and they have a contract that's going into the last year of a 3-year contract. They're going to sell the same volume and mix as the last 2 years at the same price. So not only do they have one turn, they have exactly what they need for the ensuing 12 months. And because of that, they have decided they want to become world-class in lean, and they're going to spend the next 12 months reconfiguring the factory, doing training, and not producing one part. And they know in a year and 1 day, they will be that vending machine. So they spend the whole year doing it. Now we're going to fast forward 1 year, and I'm going to ask you to help me construct the P&L of that company this new year versus the prior year. What will sales be this year versus the prior year? The same. Good. We got some people paying attention. Thank you. Because feedback is really good when you're up here. Okay? Really good. What standard cost of sales going to be this new year versus the prior year? The same. How much did I ship? Each individual item times my standard cost is going to come out of inventory. So far the P&L is the same. Now, the next line is direct labor variance. What is direct labor variance going to be this new year versus the prior year? What? No. When you say positive, okay, now we're getting into the sign convention I talked out. Give me a qualitative. Is it going to be good or bad? No. Go ahead. I was trying to help you out. Anybody else? What's direct labor variance? But thank you. What's direct labor variance going to be? Bad. How bad? Well, that's okay. It's teamwork. How bad, relatively speaking, versus the prior year? 100%. See, that's why it's going to be 100% because every dollar you spend on direct labor cannot go in inventory because you didn't produce anything. So it's going to be expensed immediately. It's going to be in the P&L, and your direct labor variance is going to be 1 year's worth of labor expense. Now, you may not work overtime, but it's going to be 1 year's worth. It's going to be horrible. What's your overhead variance going to be this year versus last year? Hint, it's almost like the direct labor. You're still going to have depreciation. You're still going to have utilities. Hopefully you still have your supply chain people, your inspection people, your VP of manufacturing. So you are going to expense all of those things. It's going to be 100%. So you're going to have 1 year's worth in standard cost and the current year's worth in the variance line. Your gross margin is going to be awful, okay? If you haven't prepared people for this and you're really excited about your lean journey, you better brush up your resume, okay? You better brush it up. Now, your net income is probably going to be a loss. So let's flip. Lean is about your balance sheet more than it is about your income statement. How's your cash flow going to be? Awesome. Why? What's your biggest expense in cash? Material. Great, you're listening. I appreciate it. So you're not going to spend a penny on 60%. You are going to be in great shape, and that's what lean's all about. Okay, freeing up capacity, generating cash. Please prepare your bankers in advance. You're going to be paying down your loan. They're going to think you're laundering money. They're not going to know. They're going to see a P&L every quarter. It's awful. It's the worst they've ever seen, but you're coming in with gobs of money. So what lean is more than anything else, it's a balance sheet play on cash, and it's a customer value proposition about metrics that companies heretofore haven't been doing. So if you do a lean event, get some beginning metrics that are different. Thank you. So again, if you're a company that's here in turns, going from 2 to 4 is a big change. You're going to have a big negative hit in income, all else being equal. The flip side is you're going to have a nice cash flow improvement as well. Dell has turns in excess of 100. It doesn't matter what they do. They played the float, and they made a lot of money on your deposits. Okay, so in trying to wrap this up now, as inventory turns improve, because that's what we're doing, we're improving turns. What I just explained in 1 year happens over a decade, and it just happens a little bit every year, okay? Because we can't go from 1 turn to infinite turns overnight, as you know. So this will be what we call flush through the P&L. As you lower inventory, trust me, I've been there, you will also discover more excess and obsolete inventory. It's like sediment in a bathtub. The lower the level of water, the more sediment you see. It's a rule. And then if you do improve your customer value proposition, I remember at a company I was at, we went from 8-week lead time, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks. And as soon as the distributors knew we were reducing lead time, they reduced their inventory. When they reduced their inventory, our sales took a stall for a bit. Now, if you don't replace that with market share, that could have a big impact on your P&L. So you got to get sales and marketing in on this as well. So how do we make all these improvements visible? We have to change our processes during the lean journey, and manufacturing needs to get accounting involved so they're an ally, not an obstacle. You're going to do new financial statements in plain English, which I don't have time to cover. You're going to eliminate standard costs and variances, make it so it's respectful and people can understand it, okay? You're going to have what we call box scores, and you're going to do value stream costing. If we do all of that, we're all on the same page. We'll have metrics that motivate the right behavior, and we'll focus on cash flow. So those are the things. So I'd ask you to think about whether you're a believer by doing 2 things. Talk to the manufacturing and accounting people at your companies and ask if they're satisfied with the accounting reports. Do a deep dive, see how accurate they are. You will be surprised. Lastly, go through your current metrics, who uses them, who understands it, and how accurate are they, and does it really help in all the lean things and promote lean behavior. That's all I ask you to do when you go back to your companies. And then when you get into that, you'll start thinking about how can we make it better. Okay? So what we simply want to do is create a scoreboard that is both supportive of and understood and known by all associates. No surprises because of lean improvements. We all celebrate wins together, not at odds with each other, and we become one team and respect each other. Okay? So here are the books I've written on this, and my co-author on this book was Rosemary Fullerton, who is an accounting professor, was recently retired at Utah State University. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I'll entertain any questions that we might have time for. Questions? Yes, sir.
I've got a quick question. So you mentioned the culture in an organization. If I were head of manufacturing, how do you recommend that I deal with the pushback that I might receive from the accounting department?
Great question. Did everyone hear, if you were in manufacturing, The question was, how do I deal with the pushback I get? You're going to have to start teaming up with the people in the accounting side of the business early on, invite them to participate in the events, let them see the improvements in the other areas that are taking place outside of traditional metrics, and before you do the event, have them say, let's see how much inventory we have invested in this cell. Let's see what our customer service, let's see what our scrap rate is, and help me get a new set of metrics and start winning them over that we're getting improvements in areas that they never before measured at the cell level, okay? And so get them involved in the improvements, and then also start talking about the metrics that they currently supply, and sit down with the people in operation. Do you use any of this? And you're going to start to see how much non-value added work there is in the accounting department, taking time to prepare these reports no one uses. And slowly they'll shift their effort to the new metrics and eliminate that work. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
Seems like for a traditional public company, it would be really hard to sustain this commitment. Do you see private companies adopting lean more effectively because they're able to sort of withstand the pressure from external valuation on their traditional financial statements?
Okay, the question was, it seems like this would be harder for public companies than private companies. I would say companies all across the spectrum are adopting lean, probably at an equal rate. I would say in the private company side, they're adopting lean accounting more because they're not as worried about quarter to quarter, month to month, okay? Nothing that's done, if we got into the detail in lean accounting, is at odds with generally accepted accounting principles or requirements by the SEC or IRS. Take a big company like Parker Hannifin. They have divisions all over. They do lean accounting. That's all they ask their divisions, their plants to do. You could do whatever you want at the local level. At the end of the month, we ask you to spend a couple hours and put it through a filter and send it to corporate in the format we want so we can consolidate everything. So they have a great answer. Do whatever you want because you're the user, but give us, the user, an easy way to consolidate it. So that shouldn't be a problem. But when you go to big public companies, corporate is typically focused externally. You know, Wall Street, the credit partners and those, they're not interested in what's going on in manufacturing at the micro level. So this has to happen plant to plant in a partnership at the local level. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
It seems to me like one of your last statements, you were talking about how customer behavior may adapt to your lean processes, requiring sales and marketing to possibly adapt to those changes in customer behavior. At what point in the lean process do you involve basically company-wide initiatives? At the very beginning or halfway, towards implementation? It sounds like it's more than just an accounting, it's a company-wide issue that needs to be addressed.
Great question. Basically, if I sum her up, when do you involve the other division, departmental areas, sales, marketing, et cetera, in the lean journey? Let me start by saying when lean was first coined in America, it was called lean manufacturing, which was the worst thing that could have ever been done. It basically was an advertisement. This is for manufacturing, another program. No one else needs to be involved. Now we progressed where it's lean enterprise and it's all about culture and organizational design. One of the big mistakes in my mind is starting lean in the manufacturing floor. If I were to start lean, it would be with different tools besides the culture thing. It would be in product development, because why should we fix all the problems when it's already come out of product development? And that's one of the last areas. I would put it at the front. The other place is lean's all about increasing capacity and customer value proposition. So sales and marketing, to get to your specific question, need to be involved at the start and understand and which levers do you need to push in terms of improvement, because lean is about value to the customer. Sales and marketing should be giving you that input. The other place I'd start, and most companies wait 5 or 10 years into the journey, is strategy deployment, or HOSHN, which is making sure that everything you're doing is in alignment. So to summarize an answer to your question is, lean is about an enterprise strategy of operational excellence, and every company needs one. And the company needs to sit down and make sure which levers they're going to push that involve all elements of the company. Okay? Any other questions? Good questions. No? If not, thank you. I'll be available if you have any questions after the session. Thank you.